My name is Jerm. This is Germ Warfare, the battle of ideas.
Yeah, you were just telling me now. So I'm going to expose you. You just said you're not wearing any pants.
I can't believe you said that.
It's okay. I'm not wearing any pants either.
Good. That'll be our kickoff. You know, I was thinking about it. I mean, you hear about this kind of thing all the time, like news anchors not wearing any clothes below their waist. And I was thinking about, like, you know, because I wear the suspenders and everything. So I was like getting all that ready, and I'm like going, I don't even need this.
That's the cool thing about doing a podcast.
Yeah.
Although, I mean, there is a video here, but it's from the waist up.
That's right. That's right. And
but
you know, we could be wearing
those.
We could even be wearing those masks that everybody says everyone wears. You know, that is fake, like a lizard face or something. You know, maybe next time we could do that.
Although I'm higher up in the picture than you are, I've got more of my.
You know, I was trying to adjust for that, but I'd have to like mess around with the chair, and I don't want to take the time, so I have to sit up straight. And then my head's like, remember when you were doing the TNT thing? Those people were like so anal. It's like if I move the slightest bit, they're like, oh, move back. You know, your head's not in the right place.
I remember that when I was at TNT.
Yeah, right.
Live radio. That was live radio, but they wanted you to sit up straight.
Well, it started out just audio, right?
And then
it went to video. And when it went to video, it was like all this like scrutiny about things, you know.
They wanted me to look like Tucker Carlson, you know that.
What?
I've still got the email.
What email? What did you just say about Tucker?
They wanted me to look more like him.
That's funny.
And they had the whole layout, you know, on that with like little X's and marks and things, and saying this is how you sit. Yes,
really. And now was that when he was on
Fox?
Was that when he was on Fox? Yeah, where he just sit there.
They even
and
told me to shave.
monologue.
They even told me to shave. They didn't like my stubble. Of course, I didn't shave because my wife likes my stubble, and I'm not going to listen to them.
How do you actually do that? I've always wondered about that. How do you
do what?
How do you have partial hair sticking out of your face? How do you keep it that way? Do you have to do some kind of weird shaving thing to just cut it part of the way down instead of a razor? Because you use a razor, it's all gone.
We need a jingle for this portion of the podcast. We're going into the manosphere.
Yeah, right. Well, it's incredibly stupid. I don't know that, but I don't think
it's incredibly stupid. I've
always wondered how men keep a stubble. Because that's like not shaving for a couple of days, and it's like then you shave, and then it's not a stubble anymore.
I'm actually going to ask you a question about this in a moment, but let me just answer your question.
Okay.
You just use an electric razor with the blade.
That's what I thought.
With the blade that sits slightly further away from your face.
Right,
that's
there
all.
you go. Well, what did you do before they had those?
I shaved
to get
clean.
that to get that Fred Flintstone look. You know?
Well, look, my wife doesn't want me to. My wife refuses to have me clean shaven because she says if I am clean shaven, then I look younger than her.
Or you look like Tucker Carlson.
And we don't want that.
We don't want that. Yeah.
He's actually, I like
he's
where he's
actually
going
one
now.
of my heroes. Yeah.
I like where he's going.
He's really
now.
smart. He's a lot smarter than you'd think. Like he talks to some of these people that, you know, he knows stuff about, but like history and stuff. I mean, he's a pretty smart guy. And I think he puts together ideas really well. A lot that he says, he doesn't filter what comes out of his mouth.
Well,
so
that's why I like where he's going now. Since he left
true.
Fox.
I mean, that's one of the cool things about him. But, you know, if you're looking for accurate news, you know, it's a bit hyperbolic at times. Not all the time, just sometimes.
It doesn't matter. I mean, he's not doing accurate news anymore. He's doing opinion and talk.
That's
like
right.
The rest
Exactly. And always has, really. I mean, you know, that's what he is.
But that's what I like. I like storytelling. We've spoken about this in the past. I much prefer storytelling and personalized, shall we say, journalism, but from a journaling perspective, if that makes more sense.
Well, that used to be very acceptable in the culture. And it isn't anymore because people are, this is going to sound terrible. I've gotten really bad about things like this, saying things like, because people are stupid now. But it's like, I've always said, I think I wrote an article about this a while back, this idea that we are really, as the listener and the one that receives information, we are the ones that are responsible to determine if what we're listening to is valid or not.
Yes.
And, they don't want it that way. I mean, they want it that the conveyor of information has to vet it. And I think there's certain situations where obviously that's expected, to some degree, obviously. But ultimately, if you have free speech, which supposedly we do, like in America at least, then, free speech means that you're going to get all kinds of crap coming at you.
I'm not a free speech absolutist, though, Todd. I
Okay.
used to be. No, I used to be. But if you actually think about what it means, it's a complicated term because Elon Musk has said he's a free speech absolutist. Now, that's obviously bunk.
Who says that?
Elon Musk. And that's obviously garbage because
Elon Musk is like...
X certainly... No, but it was... When he said that, I started thinking about what it actually means. So let me give you an example. Because people go, oh, free speech, free speech, free speech. Okay, fine. But if you come into my home, Todd, and you talk smack about my wife, I'm going to show you the door. Because...
Yeah, but that's not free speech. That's
You're
private.
You're speaking
but
freely.
That's private. That's
okay,
private.
so here's where it gets interesting. So when we talk about free speech, what are we talking about?
Well, I don't know. I'm not a constitutionalist, but I've just always assumed it's primarily what you speak in public.
Okay, so private doesn't matter. So private.
Well, private
matter.
is like, you can knock somebody's head off if they're saying things you don't like. I mean, that's a one-on-one kind of exchange, and the freedom of the speech or the content of the speech is really determined by the listener in a situation like that, because you have control over it. You can shut it up. You can kick the guy out of your house. You can beat him up. I mean, there's all kinds of things you can do. But I think I would say I'm a bit of an absolutist, but I'm also a believer in bottom-up character. I think that
exactly.
Yeah, and I think we've lost that in the culture.
Let me jump in.
And without that, then, what do you control then? I mean, are we free at all if we have no character, if we have no decency? Then we're free to do whatever we want to do, to hurt people, to rape children.
But that's where I'm going with this. So, are you going to run up to a little granny who's sitting on a bench in the park and start swearing at her because you can? It's free speech, baby. You're just being a dick. And it's not a nice thing to do. There's no sense of decency there.
No, exactly.
Which is what you're talking about. So,
yeah.
So there is a sense of self-restraint.
Yes, and whether it would even occur to you to do such a thing, because if you're decent, you won't. Where you get into sticky stuff with all of this, everything, not just free speech, with everything, is legislation and laws.
Well, yes, then I agree.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, do we really need to have a law that says you have to be decent? And yeah, if it gets out of hand, if people are heathens, but that's a top-down solution for something that should be a bottom-up solution. It should be, and bottom-up solutions are much more difficult because they take a long time. It takes generations to build character in a culture. Individually in a home, it takes one generation. You raise your kids and you raise them decently. You raise them with character and blah, blah, blah. So you're doing a bottom-up solution. But as far as the community is concerned, everybody's got to do that for it to have any impact. And
so another example, and I think I know what you're going to respond with. You're going to say that it's private, but okay, I'll give you another example. You're on an airplane. Now, I don't think it's a particularly good idea to make very loud jokes about there being a bomb on the plane or somebody being a terrorist. You've got the ability to speak freely. But
yeah,
I
that's
think
clear and present danger, though. That's actually in the law.
Even though it's a joke, I think it's a pretty bad idea.
No, you can't do that. You can't do that. And there's all kinds of, I just recently read a book, and I can't remember the title of it, of course, but it was about free speech, and it was the history of it. And it was quite interesting because you just take for granted that once the United States was established and the Constitution was established, that it was very clear what free speech meant. And it wasn't. And, you know, there were a lot of restrictions on it, on what that meant. What does free speech mean? Does it mean you can say anything you want? And I think the founding fathers or whoever it is that you know, actually came up with these ideas did not believe it to be that way. They did believe there were kind of natural restrictions, like, well, yeah, you're not going to do that. You're not going to say that. You know, and again, I think this is all mostly bottom up stuff. I mean, any decent person that has a decent character is not going to talk about a bomb on a plane. Yes. And so a lot of that, you know, over time has changed. I mean, people used to be more decent. And, you know, you can argue that through the roof. I understand that. I mean, I'm not making a statement that people back in time were more decent, but I think in general, there was a certain kind of decency that people had. And what's the definition of decency? I mean,
no, I think you're wrong, Todd. I think you're wrong. I think people, I think, are less decent. I'll tell you why.
Well, that's what I was saying. But
Jordan oh, sorry, then I agree with you. I beg your pardon. Jordan Peterson, for all his warts, I think is correct when he said that the internet has created more sociopaths.
Yeah, probably. But how does the internet create that?
Because people don't speak like that in real life.
They're not
in the
filtered.
Comments, in the comments section, you know, nobody will actually say 80% of those things to you in person.
Well, unfortunately, bottom-up work is just as based on fear of consequence as top-down is. You know, top-down says there's a law that says you can't do XYZ or XYZ, since I'm not in. Do you guys say Z there or Z?
We say Z. I think it's the British way of saying
because you're British. You got a British background. Yeah. Anyway,
what do you say? Do you say Z also?
Well, I do because I live in Canada, so I just have gotten used to hearing it. So when I
understand where that Z comes from, it's weird.
Yeah, that is weird. There is a reason for it. You have to look it up. Ask AI; it will know. It knows all kinds of things like that. But anyway, what I was saying is that I don't even know what I was saying, but talking about the decency and the bottom up consequences. It's like back in the day where we're saying people were more decent. The consequence for being indecent was going to hell. You know, people actually believed that if they went against God's will, they would be punished for it. And I don't think that's the only reason why people were decent. I mean, I think that people also, well, a lot of it, I think, did have to do with religion and did have to do with belief and not necessarily fear of consequences. I think that was part of it. I think that was part of it for the people that were marginalized or the people that were really put in a position where being evil and going against God was something that was required of them in order to survive. But you know, it's like the internet. Yeah, there's no filter. There's no consequence. And I think that's what we're moving into right now is the consequence of bad speech, like a clear and present danger form of speech, or even hate speech or whatever, however you want to define it, is the law. And it's like, okay, if it's against the law to say something nasty about Jews or whatever they're called, lesbians, whatever. If there is a law that says you can't do that, people might be less likely to do it. Therefore, everybody goes, okay, good thing we have the law, because the law then it gets into this thing of like, what is the law? What's the purpose behind the law? Is it to protect people, or is it to create control from the higher ups, from the agenda and whatever? And of course, I believe that with no question. I think every law, or generally every policy that's put out there, is put out there with this kind of disguise that it's for our better good and it's for us and whatever, our safety, whatever. I mean, we've been through this a million times, but in reality, it's not that at all. It's to create more control. It's to do all the things that we know about that the agenda is attempting to do. So that's the reason why I'm kind of an absolutist with free speech. It's like, I don't think you can have a little bit of it. I think you can have clear laws around it, inciting violence. Get up there, let's kill all these people. Come on, get out there and kill them. Okay. That's okay. It's to arrest somebody that's doing that. But also, the clear and present danger type thing, talking about a bomb on a plane. But man, it's touchy. It's like, what is inciting? Everybody says Trump incited rioting at the Capitol.
I don't think inciting violence is necessarily violation of free speech. So, okay, hang on.
It might not be. I agree. It might not be.
Hang on. We'll come back to that in a second. I took up your challenge. I looked up the ZZ thing. And
okay, great. This is important.
I actually didn't know this. So I think whoever's listening right now, whoever's listening right now is going to enjoy this if they don't know it either. But listen to this. Americans say Z instead of Z for one main reason: Noah Webster. In the late 1700s and early 1800s, Webster, an American lexicographer, set out to create a distinctly American version of English. He believed the newly independent US needed its own national language, separate from British English, to forge a distinct cultural identity. So his 1828 American Dictionary of the English Language was the centerpiece of this effort, and he made many deliberate changes to American spelling and pronunciation, including color, where he took out the letter U. Center.
Yeah, that's a big thing.
Center, and he switched the R and the E around.
Right.
Music, spelled with a K at the end. I didn't know that, which became music
I didn't know
with a
that
C.
either.
Yeah, music with a C. Makes more sense with just a C, by the way. And then, and this is the one that I've often wondered, defense, with the C became defense with an S.
Yeah.
So, as part of this project, he promoted Z over Z for the letter Z. The Z pronunciation wasn't entirely Webster's invention. It existed in some English dialects before him, but he was the one who standardized it as the American way through his dictionaries and spelling books, which became enormously influential in American society. There you go.
Whoa. Now that's very interesting, but it's also very interesting about the other things to use, and because that doesn't affect the pronunciation at all, just the spelling. And when I write my articles and my books, for some reason, I'm sticking with the Canadian or Queen's English, as they used to call it. And I don't know why.
Which makes no sense. I mean,
it makes no sense, but
real English doesn't make any sense.
I will change all the spellings to have the U's in color and defense with the C and the S and whatever. I can't remember which one's right.
I mean,
I don't change
this.
center though. That one bugs me.
A knight in shining armor, but there's a hidden K in there somewhere. Like, why?
Well, all those things are crazy. Yeah, that's in both Englishes, but yeah. Well,
I wanted to come back to it is interesting. I wanted to come back to your free speech thing. And I also did say I wanted to come back to that manosphere comment. Actually, let me just do that now before I forget. We're talking about stubble and whatnot, and it all sounds very superficial, etc., etc. But there is actually a degree of depth. This is why you shave your beard. This is why you brush your teeth, why you wear a shirt, because at the human primal level, we still want to attract our partner.
Mm-hmm. Well, of course. I don't know if that's very primal.
It is. It is primal because it's at the heart of our existence. But yet, if we talk about it, it's superficial or shallow. It's weird.
Well, I write about that a lot. You should read my Man Boy book that I just finished, that I'm working on getting an index created for it right now.
I think it goes obviously to the extreme where it does become shallow. And if your whole life is centered around, spending all day in the bathroom, then there's a problem. But I think there's no harm in basic aesthetics.
No, of course not. I mean, it's healthy. And, I'm an archetypal psychologist, so I'm very focused on archetypal patterns and energies that kind of push people in different directions. And that's one of them. I mean, being the man, the stubble indicates that you worked all night, that you didn't have time to shave, so you're a hard worker. So that's the message that a woman gets from seeing you with the stubble.
It's also more testosterone, which women like, by the way.
Well,
there was a study done on this. You could
look at it that way. There was a time where women did like that. It's hard.
Well, I mean, they still do.
Well, they do, but the culture tells them not to.
Correct. So there was a huge study done.
This is where we get into it. Yeah.
I can't remember the details anymore, but there was a very big study. I think it was done in Australia, where they, over I think 6 months or 3 months, I don't even know what the time period was, but they had thousands of girls, females, women. I can't say girls, right? And they tested various what's the word I'm looking for? Tested them with various imagery of men, from soldiers to skateboarders to surfers to corporate to different facial configurations. In other words, all these configurations were changing the whole time. And what they found is that men who were seen as, let's say, militant, like soldierly, were by far the most attractive. And I think that goes down, there's a psychology there, because there's a sense of security and safety and order. And they would switch a soldier into a surface outfit and so on and so forth. And it's very interesting. And they also found that men with stubble were they were seen with the highest level of attraction. And I think because there's a degree of testosterone that, because women cannot grow stubble, and beards also are considered masculine.
Yeah. Well, it used to be every man had a beard. Every adult man. I mean, even in Western culture, I wouldn't say every man, of course. And I'm not going to make an absolute, but that was much more common than it is now. And of course, in Islam and Middle Eastern countries, men have beards. It's part of their. I
just cannot grow a beard, because if I grew a beard, I'll be arrested if I landed in Heathrow. Actually, really? I wouldn't. No, actually, I wouldn't. I'd be welcome now because of the way the UK's swung. Yeah. But I would look I would look like an Arab, put it that way.
Do you grow a really big, thick beard if you grew one?
Yeah, but I've got like an olive skin, so
right.
So
you do look rather Arab-like.
Alhamdulillah.
Yeah, there you go. You got it. You could be mayor of New York.
when I land in Dubai, they say welcome.
That's
so.
That's right.
When my wife lands there, they search her. So.
Yeah, well, that'll be a great advantage for you once the world shifts over to majority Islam.
Okay, so now I want to go back to your comment about free speech. Listen to this. Okay, so when I said I'm not a free speech absolutist, I mean that in the broadest sense. But if we're going to split it between private and public, okay, so now it becomes more interesting. So in private, I'm not a free speech absolutist. I don't want you speaking your mind in front of my kids, for example. I don't want pornography freely accessible.
Pornography is free speech. It's a really weird one. But that's how that's a whole nother topic. I mean, I would like to know the history of that.
I don't want people swearing in front of my kid, put it that way.
No, absolutely. I mean? Right.
Okay. Right. So, but listen to this. The most basic version of free speech goes something like this. Every person has a natural right to speak their mind, and that right should not depend on whether what they say is popular, polite, correct, or approved by whoever happens to be in charge. Okay, so that's what it comes down to. When we talk about free speech, it's actually about the authority and who is that authority.
Right. Yeah, good point. I do believe that definition is based on the assumption that you're speaking to a broad public. Like
well, it goes on. In most democracies, free speech is enshrined as a legal protection against government censorship. So there we go.
Yeah.
So
right.
So in other words, when we talk about free speech, we're talking about it in relation to the government.
Yes. I got called on that right at the very beginning of the whole COVID thing. And I can't remember the details of it, but it was something like that. It was the person that called me on it was saying free speech only applies to, or the enforcement of it or whatever only applies to the government. It's like the government cannot stop you from speaking, but somebody else can. Somebody can like attack you and beat you up or whatever. And you can't, if you get beat up because you're standing on a soapbox talking about something that the crowd hates you for and beats you up for, I'm not sure about this. I don't think you can go to the police and say, hey, that was free speech. They had no right to beat me up. They shouldn't have beat the person up. That would be against the law. Okay, so you could get them in trouble for that, but you couldn't get them in trouble for denying you speaking. Because
let me ask you a question, Todd.
Yeah.
I got a question
I don't
for
know.
you.
I don't know if that's true, but that's what I think.
Well, over here, it concludes this. It says free speech is usually about the relationship between the individual and the state. So there you go. So
right.
But let me ask you a question. Why should we have free speech in public spaces? And I'm asking that very genuinely. I'm not saying I agree with censorship, but think about this for a second. In China, you can't really speak terribly freely in public spaces. Like, for example, you can't be a church pastor and stand on a corner and preach from the Bible. They don't like that. Or you can't have a protest movement. Now, that's more interesting because a protest movement, which is free speech in the public space, can lead to a degradation of the sovereignty of that region.
Yeah.
So is that a good thing? Do you want constant riots? Because then you end up with a broken society like we have.
If there's a reason why you're rioting because your freedoms or your inalienable rights as a human person are being violated, then if that's what it takes and that's all it is, sure.
Okay, so
I mean, if you don't want a free society, okay, if you like the idea of the government controlling everything at their whim, not yours, for their purposes, controlling everything and whatever, then you don't want a free society. And if that works well for you, like in China, let's say, then that's your choice as a group of people if you're in a democracy.
Okay, but now I don't know if you know about, and I don't know where it is. I think it's somewhere in the US, possibly in Washington, where the Church of Satan decided to put up a statue of their own Luciferian god. Yeah. And they did it as trolling. Obviously, they did it to show that this is about free speech, and they put it, I think, right next to a church or something. I don't know the full story. We can look it up, but they did it as a basically as a type of gambit. Now, that's free speech, but it ruins society in a way that I mean, people, they don't want it. They don't want it, but they go, oh, well, it's our free speech. So now what happens is that you have a conflict, and the conflict is driven by a type of arrogance, a type of hubris, where I'm entitled. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to say this or express this in public. But then I can respond by saying, okay, fine, but then I'm going to buy up that space and make it private. And then you can't do that.
Yeah, you could do that. I mean, the point that you're getting at, I think, is when you run into this problem where if you don't have a bottom-up stability, lifestyle, basic values that have been established. And this is what's going on around the world that everybody's getting all wigged out about. If you don't have that established, then the free speecher is going to the minority that comes out and says, hey, I want to do this and does it. That's just part of what you have to deal with if you're a believer in a free society. And it would be minimal if everybody was kind of basically on the same page of what they believe decency is, what they believe good community is or whatever, because those are natural things.
But people aren't decent.
No, they're not.
Excuse me. But if people aren't decent, what now? Are we going to just let them run amok?
Or we change our culture to a non-free society and live more like China does, or North Korea, or the way the Soviet Union was, or whatever. And we know that doesn't go well, or hasn't. Maybe China's got it down now.
No, I'm not saying I like that. I don't.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. That's up to the individual. I mean, you give this up in order to get this.
Yeah, but have a look what's going on in Western culture. You've got gay pride rallies in public spaces where the men are running around naked.
Yeah, again, me being the paranoid guy I am, I think that's all agenda driven. I think the power system in a culture that wants the culture to be not free, okay, that wants to create more and more laws and have more and more restrictions, are doing that for their own purposes. It's their agenda. And I didn't used to think this, but I definitely believe it now. And therefore, any kind of push you have toward controlling things is all part, like, let's stop those naked men running around in the street and these gay parades or whatever, which wasn't something that was going on not that long ago. I think they're all essentially agenda driven. I'm not saying somebody in the higher up sits there and goes, let's do a gay pride parade. It's just, I think it's part of this whole process of putting more and more restraints and conditions, just like what you're saying. I mean, you're a pretty free thinking guy. You know, you wouldn't be able to do what you do here in a non-free speech society.
I wouldn't be able to do what I do in China, put it that way.
Well, yeah. I mean, you wouldn't. Okay. Is that okay? Well, whatever.
No, not for me. That's not, so that's a deal breaker for me. But my point still, Todd, is if you just look around you, whatever's going on is not working. And I'm beginning to think more and more, tell me if you agree, that humans do not thrive with maximum freedom.
I think they do if they're decent.
Okay, but that's a condition that doesn't seem to be...
It is a condition. But
that
the
condition doesn't seem real.
Yeah, but decency, you're born with it. I mean, do you think your child is decent?
Actually, no, because...
No, I mean decent. I'm not talking about good or following rules or anything like that. I mean decent.
I don't know if decency applies to toddlers. I mean, they hit.
Well, it
one
probably
another
doesn't. That's probably not a good example. But I don't think they need to be taught to be decent. I think they need to be taught to be indecent. And this is a deep existential question. I mean, it's like my belief. Okay, it certainly didn't used to feel this way, but I think the reason why things are out of control the way you describe is because spirituality, religion, God, whatever, has been essentially removed from the culture. And, people would argue with me about that big time, and I get it. I don't think an organized religion is the end all. But I think the idea of a greater power, the idea of following a decent path that almost all religions that I know of have at their core values of love, essentially is kind of the core value of certainly of Christianity. And I think that work, when you focus on a non-material value that's non-material, that isn't based on the acquisition of material things like money and cars and houses and stuff, then you start to develop a sense outside of yourself, which is where the God idea comes from. It doesn't have to be an organized religion. I think organized religions are good because they kind of just have it all laid out for you.
Yes.
But it doesn't have to be that at all. In fact, in some cases, it shouldn't be that. But I think that's where the decency has been stripped from us. I think that we're too too narcissistic. We're too focused on instant gratification, material acquisition, a sense of the material world as being the only reality that has meaning. And that is so far from the truth. I mean, and most people that have ventured away from that to any amount degree are more decent people. I mean, like, would you ever say the things that you're saying people shouldn't be free to say? Would you ever say them? I don't think so.
No,
because
no.
You have a level of decency. Do you believe in God? Are you a religious guy? Are you a Christian?
Yeah.
Okay. There you go. I mean, I'm not saying all Christians or all people that believe in God are saintly and perfect by any means. No.
No, but I actually, you know what? You're right. This is an existential kind of conversation. I don't know how to put this into words. Let me give this a go. When you believe in something, a deity or a force or something that's higher than you, it places you into a submissive position in your existence that forces a kind of humility. If you believe in absolutely nothing and you are the apex of existence.
Right. That's why I say narcissistic, yeah.
Yeah, there's a degree of narcissism and hubris and self-entitlement and all kinds of other things that come with that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you're nailing it. I mean, I think that's a result of this coming out of yourself and looking at the world from that different perspective, that it isn't all about satisfying yourself. And that's what most people that we're talking about are doing. Their whole purpose is to satisfy themselves.
Yes.
Whether that be I'm always right, I can't be wrong, you're an asshole, I'm going to go out there and say anything I want to say just because I can say it. That's all inner stuff. It's nothing outside of self. And yeah.
Well, many in our alternative circles will probably push back and go, well, no, how can you say, sorry, I'm a little bit sick at the moment. I got a bit of a cold and a cough. That's why I keep
that's no excuse.
Turning off my mic. Some in our space will go, but if you're talking about being submissive or in a secondary role, you're being controlled, and this is where I disagree with David Icke, because he kind of wants us to be at the top of the pyramid of power. Although I think he argues that we're in a simulation, so I'm not quite sure how all of that works together.
That's a good point.
But the sense of humility, I think, is very important in order to be a good person or a decent person.
Yes. I mean, the thing you're bringing up is so interesting because this is kind of the atheistic argument. I remember I had a client once who was probably the most sociopathic client I've ever had, who said, I asked him, do you believe in God? And he said, absolutely not. And if I did, the first thing I would do is try to figure out a way to kill him. And I thought that was kind of an interesting way to look at it, but that's just what you're saying here. It's like, nobody has power over me. Not even a God doesn't have power over me.
But that's not true, though, because, I mean, my own wife has power over me, and I've granted her that power by...
Exactly. I mean, that's a good example.
By being in the marriage to her. I am submitting part of me.
That's because you're not fearful of that power. And I think, you're talking about your wife, you're talking about a relationship. And I think in relationships, this is one of the most important things that has gone missing. And I wrote a book on this too, about archetypal coupling and how we do relate to one another in a loving romantic relationship by allowing each partner to have a certain power over us. And they both have it. It isn't like she has the only power over you. You have power over her as well. It's different. and it can be defined differently. But I think submitting to what we're talking about, submission isn't even a good word for it, because, we don't really submit to God's power because we do anything we want, and then we get in trouble for it. But we still do it. And we think that if God had power over us, we wouldn't be able to do anything that was against God's will, whatever you want to call it. I mean, it's like saying electricity has power over us. Yeah, it does. We stick our finger in a wall socket that's 220.
But we let it. But we let that happen.
If we do that, if we allow the power to hurt us and destroy us, if we learn how to work with it, we learn how to use it to our advantage and not break its rules.
I can see a segue here. AI. We can work with AI and not let it control us. We can work with it. It's a tool.
Well, that's absolutely true. I mean, this whole AI thing, the hatred, I believe the hatred for AI is agenda driven.
It's the same thing as the .com bubble to some degree, I think.
Well, it could be that too. It could hit its peak and then just kind of dissipate out.
Well, I mean, certainly with LLMs, I think they're hitting the
LLMs. I just thought of that. I was just thinking that. The LLMs definitely, because who gives a shit? I mean, we're arguing the same argument that we would get mad at our accountant because he uses a calculator instead of figuring everything out in his brain. Or argue with, and this has been going on since I was in music in 1980, arguing about synthesized music. To say, well, those aren't humans playing those violins on that recording. Fuck if I'm going to listen to that. Nobody gave a crap about that stuff. I mean, it was to the point where it was like, and that's the same
what
thing.
We need to use.
Huh? Oh, right. You got it. I'm sorry. Was I not allowed to say that?
No, of course you can. You can say whatever you want.
Are you going to do that?
No, I'm kidding. I'm not going to censor you. We have free speech.
It's free speech, buddy. I mean,
it's free speech.
I can say whatever I want. Just don't let your kid watch this.
Absolutely.
No, I love it. I mean, it's about self-control, again, going back to the free speech thing, with decency and whatever. I mean, I would never come into your house with your kids around. And
this is what I wanted to ask
talking the way
you.
I usually talk. I mean, it's like I have respect for you and for them.
But that's what I wanted to ask you. Okay, so you've brought up the idea of decency as a prerequisite to free speech. So in other words, if you're decent, you're not going to want to run up to that granny sitting in the park and start swearing at her.
Right.
So decency comes from where? Culture, doesn't it? It's a cultural upbringing, isn't it?
I think learning the cultural mores is cultural. I don't know if decency is, and it's a really good question. I believe, and I could be totally wrong with this, I believe we're born decent. This is why I was asking you about your kid. Yeah, sure, we can do, like your kid can pull the wings off of flies and pull on the cat's ears or whatever. And that's not very decent behavior, but this is just because they don't know any better. They haven't learned yet the consequences of doing things like that. So it's a good comment to make when I say you're born decent. I think the foundation of decency you're born with. And the Egyptians, the ancient Egyptians called this ma'at, which is kind of like as above, so below. It's this idea that the divine essence is something that innately is within you, and you have to be taught to go against it. You have to learn it in a material world where there's no focus on external from yourself, where it's all about self-satisfaction and gratification. You learn to be indecent. And if you were left on your own and were raised in a culture, like you're saying, that has for generations kind of operated on this level of decency, you won't learn to be indecent. Now, I don't think there are any cultures like that exist on the earth anymore. There used to be. There may be some indigenous ancient cultures in, like, New Guinea or something that still do, along with all the other crap that you have to deal with protecting your tribe, and all of that gets all shoveled in there as well. But I think we used to have decent cultures on Earth. In fact, I think most of them were in their own way when you go back, 1,000 years or so. There's aberrations, there's strange things, slavery, weird stuff like that come in, for external tribes that come in and, blah, blah, blah. So that's a whole nother topic, but I won't go into because I don't know anything about it. But I don't know. That's a point that I'm making. I think that, again, going back to what takes decency away, yes, it's cultural, but the culture part of it, a lot of it is agenda driven. Okay, our cultures now, and I think when you had, this is one of the things I was so impressed with when you had Mark McDonald on a couple of months ago. He went into this and he was so eloquent. I mean, he's incredible. And he went into this explanation that I'm going with much better than I am. So anybody that's interested in this topic, go see that interview with Mark. But he's talking about culturally driven indecency, basically. And I think the agenda has an agenda. I think they have a reason for encouraging the indecency that comes into the culture. So the culture is not what we see in the culture today. When you're saying it's so messed up, I think it's not organic. It's not natural. It's not a natural evolution of the culture, because I think the culture will always, if it's left on its own, it will always kind of move back toward this innate ancient Egyptian idea, Ma'a. It will slowly move toward that. And, it'll have its aberrations and its strange things that happen with wars or whatever, but it will essentially move back to that foundation of decency.
But Todd,
and I don't think our culture can do that now, because the agenda, the global agenda, is too powerful. And people are stupid. I mean, I don't know if the word stupid is right. They're just blind, and we've been through that a million times. I think the majority of people just refuse to see it. They are so brainwashed into believing that the agenda can do them no harm. And
why do you think we want to have a difference between speech in private and speech in public? So, for example, in your home, you have a hierarchy and you have rules, and the reason why you have all of that is because it works.
Well, there's no incentive to control other than controlling your kids and your family. Free speech is somebody that gets up in front of a bunch of people in order to try to move them in a different direction. They're not, somebody that stands up on a soapbox isn't talking about, how pretty the lilies are over in the park. They're talking about something that's probably, conflictual or, whatever. They're talking about something they want people to listen to and to do something about.
Okay, but
that's public.
But if we agree that restriction of speech is acceptable in private spaces, why then did we get so upset when YouTube was censoring us during COVID, and Facebook? These are quote unquote private companies, right? They can have whatever policies they want. PayPal didn't like certain speech and would cancel.
I see what you're getting at. I basically have a problem with that. I think that although they're trying to do this, again, like what we were saying earlier, that the idea of free speech as a constitutional right, or whatever you want to call it, is between the speaker and the state. It's a thing between them. The state, because the state is essentially created by the people, and the people have agreed that the state should not interfere with people expressing themselves. Okay, because they may be saying something like, the state sucks. It's like we need to vote for so and so to come in. Whatever. I think private companies that can get away with restricting free speech on platforms like Facebook or YouTube or whatever, I think you're running into some. I mean, it's very complicated, obviously, legally, because private companies can't discriminate racially. Okay, they would get in trouble for that.
No, but YouTube took down my videos about COVID.
I know. So I don't really know the details of why they can get away with that, but they can't get away with saying because, you're an Arab because of your looks that they're going to cut you off. They can't do that, but they can say, we don't like what you're saying. And they could say that about anything, and get rid of you. I don't know the distinction there. And that's just because I'm stupid. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know that kind of thing, but I find that odd. I find it odd that private companies can restrict speech, but they can't restrict other things. They can't just do anything they want.
Well, you could argue.
You
could argue that they're not really private; they're more public-private partnerships. They're technocratic. You can argue that because Google and Facebook are, interwoven into state interests anyway. So you could argue that. But let's find a smaller company that perhaps isn't. Now, for the most part, we'll go, oh, it's a private company. They've got rules, so you can't say that on their premises. But then when we are the ones facing the censorship or whatever, then suddenly now we no longer agree with it, and that's what I'm trying to figure out.
Well, I think we're talking about
that inconsistency.
Yeah, I think we're talking about something that there's a very clear answer to, and I obviously don't know what it is. So I don't know if anything that I have to say about that would have any relevance or whatever.
Let me say this. With the censorship that, for example, I faced with YouTube and Facebook and Twitter and everything else, it also led to creative counter responses. So you would find new ways of getting your message out there. So it kind of forced a degree of
innovation.
Yes, and creativity. Yes.
Yeah, that's like that with anything, though. You cut your leg off, you'll figure out a way to get around, but you still wouldn't choose to have your leg cut off. That's absolutely
true. Think about it. With YouTube's censorship, I think it triggered a bunch of alternatives.
Yeah. Now, you also have to factor in here, too, that these massive private companies like YouTube and Facebook and whatever are probably, and I think there's been proof of this in certain specific incidents, are probably controlled by the state.
Well, that's what I said about the public-private partnership.
Yeah, and they're right, and they're certainly coerced by the state. Which is where any of these big infractions or complaints have come from, are from the evidence that shows up that the government either subsidized some project or gave money or paid for something.
Well, Facebook admitted that, I think. I think
right.
Zuckerberg himself said that they were influenced by the Biden administration.
Right. And I don't know. I mean, any time, like say YouTube, for instance, just to use them, if their decision to get rid of you, I think that's going to work against them from a capitalist kind of viewpoint. It's like if you're controversial in any way at all, then you're going to be better for them to have you show up on their whatever than have some, rainbow and unicorn podcast. That's just common sense. So them cutting out all of these people that have been speaking out, or these doctors deplatforming them and whatever, I can't, that doesn't make any sense as far as business is concerned. Business is always, especially media, has always in the past wanted conflict. They want to have arguments. They want people to disagree. And that sells more papers back in the day when paper was the thing you paid for. So it doesn't really make a lot of sense to me from an organic perspective that any of these companies would, on their own accord, essentially cut their own arm off with no incentive to do so. I think the media, and this is not a new idea by any means, but I think the mainstream media is completely controlled by the agenda. And it just doesn't, look at the Soviet Union. Such a good example. If you go back and look at their media back during the height of the Soviet era, obviously it was completely controlled. And the same in Nazi Germany. It's like, you control the media, you control everything. So that would be one of the very first things that the agenda would attempt to, get their fingers into, is the media. And again, this is not news. This is about as old as you get.
To be fair, though, the independent media is also heavily controlled.
Well, I think that's happening too, big time. And I didn't think, even within the last 6 years, it's interesting to me how they have managed to infiltrate the alternative news world as well as just alternative thinkers. They brought stuff in that causes a rift and causes Trump is such a good example of that. When he first came along, everybody on this side of the fence were saying he's going to save us. He's not part of the agenda. He's this, he's that, he's all these things. And then, of course, it was even before he got into office the second time, but there was a rift, there was a split in the alternative world where there were very hardcore people that believed that Trump was just part of the whole, he was a puppet like everybody else, and he was part of the agenda, the deep state, and blah, blah, blah. Now, they probably were right, but still, it was a rift. And it's still there. I know a lot of people on this side of the fence that are still very pro-Trump. So, it's still going on.
But I don't get that.
He's just one example.
I don't get that, though. Yeah, that being pro, I don't get. He's a politician. He's, a head of state. Why would you be pro or anti?
Just because it's like bringing in the mongoose to kill the cobras, and the mongoose is not anything to be proud of.
Ultimately, he's middle management. He's an actor, just like every other president and head of state.
Yeah. I think most people that were pro, not all of them. I think there were some people that, and still are, a lot of people that are pro-Trump that really do believe he's the greatest thing. But the people on our side of the fence, I know me, I just saw him as the lesser of two evils.
Yes, I get that because of the rhetoric. He says the right things about climate change and perhaps does a few, a few things that are
But
better.
I think that's all limited hangout crap.
Yeah, and the culture wars thing is better on. I agree with all of that. I think a lot of the LGBTQ stuff in the States, from what I can tell, has taken a dive since he became president, and that's a good thing.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it doesn't matter because the pendulum is going to swing the other direction soon. He's reaching the end of his term.
Yeah, right. He may have been responsible for a little bit of a reset. Like, headed with immigration, the trans thing, education, all that. We were headed so hard down the cliff with that. And he may have caused that to pull back a little bit. But that could ultimately be a bad thing because that pullback then may accelerate the dive when things switch over. So it's, who knows?
It's not binary. Yeah, but that's my point. It's not binary. He's not the savior and he's not the great Satan.
Right. I think what I focused on in my writing was something that I still feel very strongly about. This blind hate for him and the blind hate for anybody that says anything good about him. Like everything you just said, it's like there's some good things in there that you said. It may not lead to good things. It may totally fall apart, but you're saying certain good things. It doesn't mean that you're saying Trump is a great guy and a great president. You're just saying there's a couple of things that he did in there that actually made good sense. You're hated for that. You would be considered by most of the people I know that are on that kind of left side of the fence. That doesn't mean everybody, okay, but most that I know, and certainly what I see online, hate you for that. It's all black and white. You either hate Trump and want him killed, literally, or you love him and you believe he's the greatest saint on earth. It's one or the other. And if you fall anywhere in between, you're going to be thrown on the bad side of it. Because there is no in between.
But that's
kooky to me.
That's the trap of the false dichotomy.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Todd,
exactly. Yes, sir.
Speaking of your writing, how can I follow it?
You can follow me on Shrew Views to Substack, www.shrewviews.com. And I write a couple articles a week there along these lines that we've been talking about, with a little bit of psychology in there as well. I've also finished 2 books. They're not necessarily out there yet. Well, I actually have 4 books because I have 2 Shrew Views books. The View of the Shrew that is on Amazon, available now. But my other books will be coming out soon. But that would be cool.
Todd Hayen, thank you for joining me in the trenches.